They once told you the Bible held the whole truth. But what if the most dangerous truth was carefully removed? There was a forbidden path illuminated by a divine force called Sophia that early Christians followed long before the church built its throne and crowned itself the guardian of salvation. Hidden deep within the forgotten scriptures lies a story so revolutionary it threatened to unravel the foundations of organized religion. This wasn't just an ancient manuscript locked away in a forgotten vault. It was living wisdom cherished by early followers before the church seized control. These sacred texts spoke of a divine feminine presence, a cosmic intelligence woven through all of creation, and a truth so powerful that rulers ensured the masses would never hear it. Redemption doesn't come from blind submission, it comes from awakening. The identity of Sophia was erased, her teachings buried, and her once revered gospels labeled heresy. But she wasn't feared for her darkness, she was feared for the freedom she offered. With the knowledge that she possessed, every soul became a temple, and every seeker became a sovereign. It had the audacity to teach that the spark of the divine did not live in holy persons, but rather might be found within you. What would you do if the faith you inherited was a carefully edited version of a deeper, wilder, and more ancient truth? This is the question you should ask yourself. Within the context of this movie, we will reveal the true beliefs held by early Christians prior to the church's assertion of dominion. When you hear it, there will be something within you that you will remember that. A radiant, flowing, and nurturing presence known as Sophia existed long before institutions enshrouded spirituality in the weight of dogma and strict hierarchies. This is something that very few people are aware of. A sentient force that continues to travel through the generations and silently touches individuals who are courageous enough to seek beyond what they have been told. Sophia was not merely a beautiful idea that was hidden away in dusty scrolls. Rather, she was the living, breathing incarnation of divine wisdom itself. She was the first light, the first hug of the universe, the womb of compassion and divine intellect. She was the initial embrace of eternity. And you are correct, she was a woman. The name Sophia is derived from the Greek word for wisdom. Nevertheless, in ancient literature, particularly in Gnostic writings, the meaning of this word extends well beyond what is found in a dictionary. Imagine a primordial awareness that upon beginning its existence already possessed the knowledge of everything that has ever existed and will ever exist, but nonetheless made the decision to engage in the process of creation. The spark of creative force is said to have sprung from Sophia, who is credited with not only giving form to the universe, but also to the idea of error as stated by the Gnostics, mostly due to the fact that even knowledge, when it is walking alone, is capable of making mistakes. And this mistake would change the path that human history would take in ways that the world was never intended to forget. According to the Gnostic cosmology, Sophia left the pleroma, which is the sphere of divine perfection, because she had a strong desire to create on her own without the approval or equilibrium of her masculine counterpart. The consequence of this was the emergence of the demiurge, a lesser creature who went on to exert influence over the material realm, which is the world in which we currently find ourselves. In addition, if you have ever looked about and had the impression that things in this place are weird, unjust, or unconnected in some way, you now understand why. Sophia, by this mythical act, became both the mother of matter and the mother of the soul. She carried within her the pain of separation as well as the unending spark of salvation. It was not a sign of weakness that religious patriarchies subsequently denounced, recast as sin, and buried under centuries of terrifying theology. Rather, it was a cosmic representation of the human experience. The story of Sophia is not about a failure of morality. Rather, it is about the sinking, the forgetting, the breaking, and the summons to rise again. The fall into delusion, the thirst to remember, and the aching pull back toward the divine origin are all things that everyone who seeks spiritual enlightenment goes through. And she reflects all of these things well. Only she was able to accomplish it on such a massive scale that it shook the very foundations of the universe. And this is precisely the reason why her name was obliterated. Her gospels were destroyed, and her voice was replaced with stringent regulations that were designed to stifle the call that came from inside. Sophia is a representation of the sacred feminine, which is the principle that nurtures, reconciles, and illuminates, while the logos, which is the principle that gives form and structure, is the manifestation of the male principle. It is not a coincidence that the same process is occurring within each and every one of us right now. Who hasn't experienced the conflicting feelings of being torn between icy rationality and delicate intuition, between performing what is expected of them and listening to the sound of the soul's quiet voice? Sophia is the ancient teacher who invites people who are courageous enough to see past the glittering surface of appearances to enter deeper waters by whispering to them. You should be aware that there is a term for the restless pull that you have experienced, as well as a knowing presence that is present within you but cannot be described by religions, commandments, or traditional beliefs. Also, it is not considered heresy. It is Sophia who is beckoning you to return to yourself. However, before you can fully comprehend the gravity of that call, you need to discover the location where she has been hiding all this time and the person who has the audacity to stifle her voice. As a result of the fact that whether you choose to accept it or not, the records were in existence, and now they are returning ready to be remembered. There were sacred manuscripts that included echoes of Sophia's name that existed a very long time before official councils decided what the human race was permitted to read. These Gospels told a story that was very different from the one that we have been trained to accept. They were buried in caverns, hidden in ancient libraries, and passed down from religious mystics who were living in exile. All three of these Gospels, the Gospel of Philip, the Gospel of Pistis Sophia, and the Gospel of Thomas, speak of an inner knowing rather than blind obedience. A salvation that is discovered within rather than an external throne that bestows it. Despite the persistent efforts to eradicate them from history, these manuscripts, which are filled to the brim with riddles, have managed to endure the test of time. True awakening, according to the Gnostics, did not come about through the practice of adhering to doctrine, but rather through gnosis, which is the direct and personal understanding of the divine spark that resides within. They realized that Christ and Sophia were not two distinct entities, but rather two facets of the same cosmic energy that were linked with one another. There is a perfect equilibrium between the masculine and feminine, as well as between the logos and wisdom, action and consciousness. This concept was regarded as harmful by those who wanted to exert control because it posed a threat to the basic basis upon which they built their authority. Due to the fact that it circumvented their authority and shattered the illusions that they had painstakingly built, it was considered heresy. Just for a second, try to picture a society in which people may commune with the divine without the requirements of temples, priests, or ceremonies, where salvation was not sought in obeying decrees, but rather in remembering who they were in their true form. These illegal works had the audacity to demonstrate that Christ in his complete nature was not limited to the figure that was nailed to the cross. Rather, he existed as a living principle, one that resonated through Sophia, the cosmic wisdom. All of the lost souls were summoned back to their place of origin by Sophia, who served as the guide and the perpetual light in the darkness. She was a map for those who were ensnared in the illusion of earthly appearances, and she was the mother of those who had been forgotten. This is the secret fact that they attempted to have buried. The decline was not of the physical body, but rather of the consciousness. The sin that we committed was not committed by our physical bodies, but rather by our spirits, which forgot their infinite essence. It was when the soul confused the ephemeral material life for the full story of existence that the actual collapse took place. When you have the feeling that there is more to this world than meets the eye, the voice coming from within you is the stirring voice of Sophia's wisdom, the dream of stars, of old cities, and of truths that have stood the test of time. Truths that you have never been forced to learn, but that have always been a part of you. This is Sophia rousing you from the trance of forgetting that you have been in. The books that were considered to be banned were never hazardous due to the words that they contain. Rather, they were dangerous because to the emotions that they could evoke in the reader. It is through these books that you are reminded of who you truly are, not only a human being living a short life, but rather a piece of the eternal, a star being that is assuming the form of a human person. It is not ink on parchment that constitutes the genuine gospel, which is the genuine route to salvation. It is the book that you carry in your heart, the one that remembers its birth in the heavens, even in the middle of the chaos and distraction that the world presents. The knowledge that Sophia has left behind for you to rediscover is described here. Now allow me to ask you this: what if these gospels that have been forgotten were not destroyed by accident? Imagine for a moment that there was a rationale to their repression. Assume for a moment that someone somewhere required you to continue sleeping. As we progress into the following chapter, we will see how this old knowledge has been concealed in plain sight, concealed within myths, symbols, and secret societies, waiting for the appropriate souls to reawaken and claim it once more. The spiritual history of the West underwent a significant transformation by the 3rd and 4th centuries when something important occurred. The rise of the imperial church was not founded on the principle of truth preservation. It was about accumulating power in one place. In order for Rome to achieve its goals, it was necessary to have a hierarchical structure that was rigorous and dominated by men. There was no room for Sophia inside that new order, therefore she was eliminated. An empire that was built on control could not tolerate the presence of a divine and feminine power that embodied freedom, reflection, and inner understanding. Using her flowing maternal energy, Sophia posed a threat to the neatly structured hierarchy that had been carefully constructed. The very fact that she was there was a manifestation of personal gnosis, direct contact with the divine and the sacred force of the hidden universe. However, empires are maintained through obedience rather than through individual understanding. As a result, the teachings of Sophia were deemed to be heretical, her name was removed from the canon, and her knowledge was not allowed to be preserved. The only thing that left was a veneer of faith, a form devoid of spirit. The dogmatic creeds and external rituals that previously guided souls inward have taken the place of the wisdom that formerly guided within. Salvation was no longer a process that occurred on an internal level, but rather a transaction that was managed by institutions. In this new interpretation, the Divine Mother, who had previously held the universe in her arms, was reimagined as the origin of sin, as Eve in the garden, the personification of temptation. The principle of femininity was not embraced. Rather, it was demonized and reduced to a symbol of vulnerability and possible danger. It was even the magnificent mystical emblem of the Grail that was stripped of its original meaning. On the contrary, the Grail was not merely a chalice or a relic. Rather, it was the vessel of heavenly wisdom, which was Sophia herself concealed in parable. There was no such thing as a stone temple. Rather, it was something that existed within the human soul. If that were to be revealed, it would mean that every single man and woman possessed the sacred inside them, rendering mediators and organizations irrelevant. In no way was the suppression of Sophia motivated by theology. Rather, it was motivated by power. When people recognized that the sacred feminine was already present inside them, they would no longer bow down to thrones made of gold or to dogmas that were written out of fear. As they evolved into independent beings, they would become walking temples that were impossible to manage. This resulted in the rewriting of stories, the destruction of gospels, and the distortion of myths. But the truth, like a flame in the darkness, never went out. Imagine for a moment that the Grail that you have heard about in stories is actually a metaphor for the knowledge that you have forgotten about yourself. Is it possible that Sophia is still waiting for you inside of you, not in the form of literature or relics, but rather in that soft voice that encourages you to recall who you are? In the following chapter, we will investigate the manner in which her concealed knowledge was transmitted through the use of secret command symbols and encoded signals that defied the passage of time. Underneath the surface of our contemporary world, there is a stirring of something that is ancient. There is a voice that is quiet but unmistakable, that is calling those who are looking for something back to what they have lost in this age of deserted temples and disillusioned dogmas. It is not a trend that non-dogmatic spirituality is experiencing a spike in today. Rather, it is the echo of Sophia's appeal. You are hearing her voice each and every time you have the sensation that the truth is beyond words, that the divine beats in your heart rather than in the rules. It is not as a figure in a dusty text that she reappears. Rather, she is a live presence that moves through the various stages of intuition, inspiration, and divine balance. Sophia is the subtle power that is responsible for every moment in which reason and feeling come together, when heaven and earth, masculine and feminine, come together in perfect harmony inside you. It is not an exterior event that her homecoming signifies. Rather, it is an internal awakening that millions of people experience without completely comprehending. The inner rift that has kept us fractured for countless lifetimes is something that Sophia encourages us to heal. As a result of the dissociation between spirit and matter, as well as between the head and the heart, we have forgotten who we really are. However, when you recall even for a few moments that light still resides within you, unbroken and eternal, you become a part of her return. You are able to restore a portion of the cosmic order with each and every act of reflection and spiritual inquiry that you have the courage to ask. Because of this ancient wisdom, traditions discuss the holy marriage, which is the process of reuniting the elements of the soul that have been separated. In the process of moving through these rituals and symbols that have been forgotten, Sophia serves as a reminder that redemption was never about abandoning the world, but rather about restoring the wholeness that was concealed within it. She is not only a person from mythology, rather she is the timeless pattern of equilibrium and knowledge that mankind absolutely needs to rediscover in order to heal. Each and every soul that is reawakened becomes a new page in the book that shouldn't be read. Every individual who has the ability to restore their divine spark creates a hole in the fabric of illusion that the demiurge has constructed. It is no longer the case that Sophia's knowledge is concealed in caverns or protected by secret directives. Your inquiries, your desires, and your refusal to accept solutions that are superficial are where it resides. It is because of this that you are a part of her wonderful comeback. As a result, I would like to inquire about the frequency with which you experience a silent and inexplicable draw towards something ancient and sacred that you have not been taught by anyone. Those are the words spoken by Sophia. Furthermore, in the final chapter of this book, we will investigate the ways in which her knowledge has been preserved, hidden away in myths, symbols, and prophecies, and waiting for you to decipher them. It was never merely a fiction that Sophia's narrative was told. Rather, it was a message that was intended for those who had eyes to see and ears to hear. She shows us that making mistakes is not the same thing as failing. Rather, it is the beginning of something. A necessary descent is required before wisdom can emerge, and this includes every fall, every mistake, and every night of the soul. There is a hint from the wisdom of Sophia that enlightenment is not about living a perfect life, but rather about learning through experience and remembering through forgetting. She brings to our attention the fact that redemption is not about abandoning this world, but rather about remembering who you are while you are residing in it. The purpose is not to free oneself from the material, but rather to sanctify it by the presence of conscious awareness. The ordinary is transformed into a sacred ground with each and every heartbeat, every moment of calm, and every choice that is made with awareness. The way that Sophia travels is not above life, rather it is within existence. The ancient wisdom that she possesses demonstrates that the sacred does not belong to imposing structures or faraway sky. It manifests itself in the secluded regions of the soul, in the pauses that occur between ideas, and in the pain that you experience when beauty causes your heart to shatter. The location where the divine resides has always been within you. It is not in ideologies or in relics. Rather, it is in the unending flame that refuses to go out regardless of how many times the world tries to stifle it. The teachings of Sophia emphasize that the feminine is not in contradiction to the divine. Rather, it is the womb of the world itself. The birth of creation was never the result of dominance. Rather, it was the result of equilibrium, the divine combination of masculine power and feminine knowledge. The process of rediscovering Sophia involves remembering the half of your own soul that you have lost, integrating the knowledge that you have been taught to fear, and becoming whole once more. In addition, it is possible that the thing that the church strove so hard to eradicate was the most transparent and unadulterated glimmer of divine truth that humanity has ever been given. A reality that does not require the involvement of mediums or establishments. It is a reality that you have the courage to tell you that you have never been apart from the source. You have simply forgotten. It is not that Sophia will return, rather it is happening right now within you. After that, I will leave you with this. When was the last time you sat down in silence and questioned yourself? Who was I before the world told me who I should be? Sophia is included inside that inquiry, and the key to your freedom can be found in that recollection. It was never only ink on parchment that made up the forbidden book of Sophia. Rather, it was the living memory of a depth of wisdom that the world was not yet prepared to confront. A gnosis that bypassed thrones, temples, and decrees was the way of direct inner knowing that the early Christians believed in. They followed Sophia, the holy personification of divine wisdom, prior to the church taking over and transforming awakening into obedience. What you've uncovered tonight is more than history, it's a mirror of your soul's memory. The story of Sophia isn't trapped in lost gospels or ancient scrolls, it lives within you. Every time you question what you've been taught, every time you feel there's more beneath the surface, that's her voice calling you back. The forbidden truth they tried to erase is this: the sacred was never something outside of you. It was always yours. Reclaiming Sophia means remembering what they conditioned you to forget. Salvation isn't about escape, it's about remembrance. And the divine doesn't reside in thrones or temples, but in stillness, in intuition, in the quiet courage of those who dare to seek. If you're one of those souls drawn to hidden truths, I invite you, what part of tonight's revelation stirred something ancient within you? Let us know in the comments. Because the true church was never built with stone, it was always the awakened heart. If this message spoke to you, subscribe and stay close. The veil is lifting and many forbidden chapters are waiting to be revealed.